as a GUI on Headlamp. So take it away, Joaquin.
Is it mute? It's better now. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for showing up. And my name is Joaquin. I work for Microsoft. We do this project called Headlamp, and this is like the second part of, second part of a talk that I started giving in the last rejects in Paris. But before I go to the actual part of publishing, I need to ask, who doesn't know what Headlamp is or only learned recently what it is? By show of hands. All right. So very quickly, Headlamp is a modern and generic UI for Kubernetes. What modern means is that it looks good and it's done with all the right technologies, for a controversial statement. And also it's generic in the sense that it's not made for using only with AKS or Minikube or anything like that. So it should work with whatever you got for Kubernetes. If it doesn't, we want to know about it. We want to add it. Sometimes you have projects that only work on desktop, or they have like a text UI or even a graphical UI like Headlamp. And others only work if you deploy them as a service. Headlamp supports both. So basically, we want to be where you use stuff, not to try to adapt too much to us. And that means also that you can install it with whatever people are using out there. So we have quite a lot of options there. And the most important thing that is related to the talk is that it's extensible through plugins. So it has a plugin system. With the plugins, you can change many things in there. And I'm claiming that it's an ideal platform for creating custom Kubernetes UIs. We're also 100% open source, so there's no version like, maybe Microsoft has this special version, then we get the trimmed down, stripped down stuff. That's not like that. You get what we are developing. That's the only thing we got. And it's a CNCF project, as you can spot right there in the middle of it. So I was saying that this is the second part of a talk that I started giving in the last rejects Paris, so I just have to do a little recap of that. In there I was saying that we have this really incredible ecosystem of tools. We have lots of stuff, as you saw here. And with great tools comes great fragmentation. So in terms of UI and user experience as well, you can see that it's you have this fragmented space where I think it affects, or at least I claim it does, the learning curve. So if you have many different tools, you have to learn each one of them, or how the UI works for each one of them. There's sometimes context switching, so maybe a tool only runs on the web, another one is a command line interface. Sometimes you have to change. All of this impacts really what you're doing. And there is inconsistency, right? If a UI is, it's a text UI, of course it works different than a graphical UI. Even within graphical UIs, you have many different ways of working. Like, for example, if you cannot delete a pod, what happens then? Do you get an error, or do you don't see the option to delete the pod, right? So on top of, coming from that, what I'm trying to sell you here is that Headlamp is a great UI for CNCF tools. And why is that? Is because it's customizable. So like I was saying, you can add new routes, you can add app menus, even if you're using the desktop version. You can change the sidebar, you can change even the logo or branding. We have all that. It has libraries to perform the most common Kubernetes operations. So if you want to list pods, we got a function for that. If you want to do, like scale up, we also have that. And since it's web and desktop, sometimes you don't want to have the same thing in both of them. That's what you commonly want, but sometimes it's like maybe you don't want something to run on the web because it's going to be a shared environment. So we have also ways to restrict that. And we also allow running certain command line tools from that for better integration. And we have stuff like unified plugin settings and all that. So I thought we could look at some examples that exist right now. This is the Prometheus integration. So this is a plugin that we ship with Headlamp. So Headlamp by itself, it doesn't really have anything like, okay, you know, we're going to use Prometheus for graphics, right? But we do ship with some plugins that offer that. This gives users the ability, or vendors, I guess, to say, okay, I want Headlamp, but I don't want the Prometheus plugin there. So in any case, going back to the UI, so as you see, you got in the screen, you can see there is a chart that's powered by Prometheus that shows you the pod, the CPU in this case, and but that's very built into the UI, right? If I didn't tell you, okay, this is the Prometheus plugin. If you don't have that plugin, there's nothing in there that says, okay, you know, this is the functionality that comes from this plugin. It's just we try to integrate things seamlessly. An example that is kind of opposite of that in terms of a seamless integration is the Compose plugin. So we have a plugin for the Compose tool, which translates your Docker Compose manifest to Kubernetes ones. So we did this very simple UI, but this is like its own section, as you see there. The only reason why we don't see the Compose logo is because I was too lazy at the time. But otherwise, it's its own thing. So in here, you know that you're using Compose, right? So it's really up to whoever is doing the plugin to, you know, just show whatever you prefer. And this is another example that is kind of different from the other two, because in this case, what you see there, it's the open cost plugin. The open cost plugin gives you the cost of running your workflows, of course, and it integrates it as a column in several tables. So that table is the exact same table that we show without a plugin. All the plugin does is to insert a column on that table, in that table, right? Yeah, and then we have stuff like, you know, this is yet another case where we have a section called apps, but that's actually Helm charts and ArtifactHub to point to them. So it allows you to install them. We have those that I showed you before were done by us in the team, but now we have also plugins coming from, for CNCF tools coming from other external contributors. This one is called is for Kubescape, and it's contributed by this I think independent developer called Mateis. He also published another one called Trivy, and we have one that we released last week called about the Flux project. Then we have some work in progress stuff like the Minikube plugin. This is I just put it here even though it's not yet released, because it's an example of running a tool that is you know, is the same tool that you run when you run Minikube, but it's running from the plugin. And yeah, so you know, this is not a talk about how to build your plugin. It's about how to publish your plugin. But I cannot really talk about publishing the plugin without talking about building the plugin. So very quickly, and in the spirit of that draw, we have a tool called Headlamp plugin, an NPM tool. So you install that tool, then call Headlamp plugin create. It creates it bootstraps, you know, a plugin for you, and you can go from there. So yeah, you have the docs in there. I won't go into detail. We also have a little VS Code extension that simplifies a couple of things, like getting Headlamp. Our intention is to make it more powerful in the future. Yeah, so once you build your plugin, once you develop your plugin, you have the functionality that you want. Then you have to build it, of course, and you have to release it. So for building it, it's very simple. It's the regular stuff you find in any NPM project usually. So npm run build. Then we have a special command called npm package for npm, and that just creates the tarball with the things that the plugin needs. Normally that's just main.js and package.json. So that's the example you see there with the Flux beta. All right, so discovering your plugin. Before we go again to to the publishing guide, we have to talk, why do people publish plugins, right? Why do they want to publish plugins? And they want to do that because they want other people to use it, right? And now I can tell you that Headlamp in itself, right, it doesn't have any ability to discover plugins. It doesn't list plugins from anywhere or anything like that. This is done by design, more intentionally, because we want Headlamp to be, of course, as clean as possible, but also because, as I said, you can deploy it as a web application. And in that case, it's very unlikely that you want your users to go there, list plugins. Where would they install it? Is it like going to run locally? Do they install it to a server and then it's available for everybody or anything like that? So that means that in terms of plugin discoverability in Headlamp, only the desktop version has that. And it has that because we ship with a plugin called the plugin catalog. So the way that you discover plugins is by using a plugin called the plugin catalog. But like I was explaining before, this is very seamlessly integrated. Every time you install and open Headlamp, you're going to see plugin catalog there. Yeah, so essentially this means that it's a guide about publishing plugins, sorry, but for Headlamp for desktop, not for everybody or for every single use case. Okay, and now we get to it. So how do we publish a plugin? The pre-step is you have to have your plugin released. So you build a plugin, you have to release a plugin. Why is this here as part of the guide? Because right now we only support downloading plugins from 3 places. That's GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. The reason for this is related to security and related to how also ArtifactHub allows you to create repositories. And we'll go there about ArtifactHub. Yeah, so I'm sure everybody's familiar with GitHub, but just to give you an example of what this involves, it's very simple. You create a release, you draft up some notes, you push the tarball that you did with the npm run package command to that release page. Then you push the tag, or you could have pushed the tag before. It's up to you. This is how I do it. And then you associate the tag with the release and you press publish. So now it's available on the internet. And you can download it from there, assuming your project is public, of course. All right, so in the screen we have a screenshot of what the release looks like on on GitHub. This is the Flux one, and just has the tarball. You can just copy or download the URL. Download the package from that. Okay, so now your plugin is available online. But we want to bring it to users that are using Headlamp with the plugin catalog thing. And the first thing to do is to create a repo on ArtifactHub. So this means that the plugin catalog actually uses ArtifactHub as a centralized source for all the plugins. Who doesn't know how ArtifactHub works here, by show of hands? Everybody knows. Just a second. Yeah, so we chose ArtifactHub because it's not really a place where you push your code. It's just pointing to the code or packages. We have our own package type in ArtifactHub called Headlamp plugin. It allows us to do stuff like having verified packages, CNCF packages, official packages, all that stuff. All right, so how you do it, if you're familiar with it, you just go to your control panel, click Add, then it's all graphical. You just choose the plugin type. It's going to be Headlamp plugin there. You choose the name for your repo and the URL. Of course, at this point, ArtifactHub doesn't know if you own the repo. So for ArtifactHub to know that, you have to place a file called ArtifactHub repo at the root of that repo. And this is in your favorite format, YAML. You have the name and the email there. So that's all it's needed. The next time that ArtifactHub starts the scanning, I guess, it will find that your repo has a file, so it's official. Now it recognizes it. It starts looking for packages inside it. So the next thing is to create a package. Now this is similar to, this is the way that ArtifactHub works for all the package types, by the way. There's nothing new here. And the package types, they have a common base. So they have, you have to give it a name, you have to give it a logo, you have to give it a creation date, a bunch of stuff like this. And then usually they have annotations, annotations that are related to the package type that they are. So in our case, the annotations that we have so far are these four: is the archive URL, the archive checksum, the version compatibility, and distro compat. The first two are easy to understand what they do. That's actually the the URL of the tarball that you push to the release page that I mentioned before. Then the checksum, of course. The version compat is, of course, which version of Headlamp is this compatible with, right? So we have some control there. And then the distro compat, this is a way for us to tell Headlamp, you know what, this plugin only works on desktop, not on the web, or this one doesn't work on Docker desktop, right? I think we're not actually, checking all of these, but this is like it's a future thing, so you might as well just add these there. Yeah, and this is the full example, for example, for Flux. As you see, it's got all that I mentioned, and it's very easy to understand. Even the logo is just a URL that we push to the main repo. And this is what you get afterwards. So the next time that ArtifactHub scans your repo for packages, it finds it. By the way, you can have your own your repo with just one package, and you place the ArtifactHub package right there, or you can have folders with different packages. Sorry. Yeah, and if you see like the name in there and the description, the repository, which is not very visible there, and the author, this is all stuff that is coming from ArtifactHub. Okay, so there's another part. So this is the guide for publishing plugins, right? It's I think it's super simple, assuming that, of course, you want your plugin published in a public way, and that you're fine with having it on ArtifactHub. Now, some things to consider is that by default we are not showing all the plugins in the plugin catalog. We chose this for for security reasons. So we thought, okay, so anybody can just go there, push a plugin, saying, "Hey, I'm Prometheus," and then you install that code, right? So in order to give it a little bit more control, we are only showing plugins that are official on ArtifactHub. The process for doing that, for being marked as official, as far if I remember correctly, is you have to open a ticket with ArtifactHub and say, "Hey, I'm the owner of this project. I'm actually the person behind this, the company behind this project." So that means you cannot just, if you don't own a certain project, you cannot claim it to be official from you. And the other way, because we worked on plugins like OpenCost and stuff, the other way is to be in our allow list. This allow list, basically right now it's us, but we're gonna have a process to open it to other people that, that we have that just basically come to us and say, "Hey, I'm a real person, not gonna push anything bad, I promise," all that stuff. Yeah, and also for, like I said before, for security reasons, we also only allow downloads from GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. A bit about the technical side of this. So I said that Headlamp does not really list plugins, but the actual plugin download mechanism is in the Headlamp desktop side. This is because otherwise plugins could actually fake a lot of stuff and say, "Hey, I'm actually official, because I have this official check mark." Yeah. Or they could say, "Yeah, this URL is this plugin will download from GitHub for sure, but then use another URL," right? So this way we actually show to the user, this plugin wants to download something from this place, and you can actually see, and there's no way that the plugins can fake that. Yeah. So what if you want to show your friend your plugin that you just developed and you're not yet marked as official or allow listed in our repo? We have settings for this plugin. You just go to the settings, say, I don't want to see official, I don't want to see verified. Then you see everything, but then it's up to you, and you know, use it at your own risk. Yeah, and if you want to start looking into doing something for your project, we have, of course, the GitHub repo. We have the Headlamp channel in our, sorry, too much cold last night. And on the Kubernetes Slack, you can follow us. And we have a newly drafted contribution guide. So check that out. And also a newly published, like I published this just before the talk. There's now basically what I was talking about in this talk. Yeah, and if you are going to KubeCon, we have a Contribute Fest session for Headlamp on Friday. So it's at 2 p.m. I think. Yeah, and the idea is to just have a little chat about the project, or make it like a workshop kind of thing, and just bootstrap some plugin, start developing that. This was quite fun in the last KubeCon in Paris. So yeah, we're going to be there. It's going to be me and Rene. They're sitting right there. And yeah, that's all I got for you.
We've got a couple of minutes if anybody has any questions. Yeah?
How do you compare this with other tools such as Lens, which I personally use effectively? So will it be like as bigger like Lens, or this is going to be like bare bones, bare minimal?
Sorry, what is the question about Lens?
Question is, how do you compare this with Lens? Lens
Yeah.
is also another tool which we can run, right? So
Yeah.
how do you compare?
So I haven't used Lens lately. I've tried it before. Lens, as far as I know, and again, I don't know if that's the way it still is, but it's desktop only. I was saying that we are desktop, but also web. So in there's a lot of flexibility. I guess it's not for everybody, to use it, especially if you're just an end user in that case. But I think the ability to say, I want Headlamp, and I want this couple of plugins, and I just deploy all of these to my clients. This is something that we allow, and I don't think Lens supports that. Now, last time I checked, I couldn't really understand if Lens is 100% open source or not. I think I've read some things about their, going to a mixed model or something, but yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, of course, it's both are Kubernetes GUI, so both, I guess, manage Kubernetes. It's at some point, I guess, it depends on each other's preferences, and yeah.
Yeah, I can follow up a little bit more on that. So I'm one of the founders of the project and the project manager. But when we started this project, we were actually looking, like the Lens website said it was open source, and we looked for the source. It wasn't there. This was like back in 2018. So basically, we were, because we wanted to have a starting point, and we wanted to work with somebody else. And so we started this. A few months later, it was open source, and recently it's been unopen sourced. And so I would say the open source aspect of it is not very stable at this point, which for us is very, very important. If you're going to have a community tool, you have to have some kind of guarantees. We got this into the CNCF because we think that's a good home for such tools. I don't think you'll find Lens there. And as far as features and functionality, we have been, for the last few years, we've been looking over at all the other tools, and we think we have pretty much at least feature parity. But with the plugin system and the plugins that we've added, we think we are now fairly, past that functionality. So just to be clear, I think we were definitely looking at them. We were frustrated with the open source aspect of Lens, for example, but there are other good tools like what is it, K9S and stuff is really cool for the command line, but we're web-based. So yeah, we feel very comfortable with the functionality where we're at, and being a community tool. So
great. Any other questions?
So am I thinking about this the right way or the wrong way? That if Backstage is for developers, this is the ops side of the house.
This is the Kubernetes, I guess, focused. But so it's there are similarities with Backstage and Headlamp in that both allow these plugins that are made very similarly and all that. However, like you said, Backstage is a portal for developers, so you find about your services there and all of that. It also supports Kubernetes, but there is no special UI for Kubernetes. We are focused on Kubernetes, right? So you don't go there to create a developer portal. I guess you can create a plugin that kind of gives some functionality that would overlap with what Backstage does. As in Backstage, you can also do functionality that would overlap with what Headlamp has as its base. But we basically focus on providing everything that you expect to find in a Kubernetes UI. So you're going to find the workloads, the configuration. You're going to find ways to scale things up if you want to do that manually, so that sort of thing, right? Since you're asking that, we published today a way for integrating Headlamp inside Backstage. So now, because I said in Backstage you don't have really like a dedicated Kubernetes UI. For that you have some stuff around. So now with this way that we integrated it, you can install a couple of plugins in Backstage. And then when you go, for example, to one of the services that is a Kubernetes service, you're going to find a button that they already support called Open in Kubernetes Dashboard, but it doesn't have really to do with the original Kubernetes dashboard, right? It's configurable, so our plugin sets that up. So when you click it, you go into a dedicated view of Headlamp, just slightly different, right? So it looks a little bit better when it's embedded in. So it's really embedded in the UI. And then from Headlamp, if you're looking at, for example, a pod, and you want to see that pod then in Backstage, or the service in Backstage, we also have like a backlink. So you can click it and you go into the Backstage area of that. Yeah. So it's like a cross-linking thing. So I think with this solution, we're really curious to see how people that are currently using Backstage and want to have like a powerful UI for Kubernetes and vice versa will respond to this.
There's a follow-up to that actually. Sorry, but the plugins, can they be write? So can you have an input box that then applies to Git somehow? So if you wanted to make a config change to a config map or something.
Yeah, we have a way to run CLI tools. We usually are very conservative in terms of what we open to the plugins in terms of functionality. So we have that. I think we have it enabled only for Minikube and a couple of other commands. And you have to run a special flag, right? But nothing really impedes that you just say, okay, I want to run any command. And then your plugin can say, hey, run this command for me. The command is git with whatever these values. These values come from whatever the user wrote here, and I picked it up, right? So I think we have a very solid and flexible solution.
Last one.
Chris is going to complete my...
Yeah, I just want to make a point to that. That's a perfect example of, using Headlamp as a tool to kind of unify the CNCF tool set, right? A lot of people were looking at, it was kind of confusing between Backstage and Headlamp. What should I use? They're complementary. And if you set them up and the tool and the projects work together to get that right, it's actually a really good experience. And so that's kind of the point of the talk we gave at Paris and the talk we started out, what we started off with here. we're going to be working on that. We hope everybody else does too. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Really great stuff. We'll be starting off with our lightning talks in just a few minutes, so stick around.